Ladies, whether you're going through the perimenopause or you're not even remotely near that stage in your life at the moment, listen up, because I've got some really important information for you that you need to know and that is not talked about often enough. Today, I'm talking about your relationship with food during the perimenopause. Now, for those of you who are part of my community, most of you are here because you are struggling already with your relationship with food and your body. And so even if you are years away from the perimenopause, it's important to be aware of this time in your life can trigger for some the resurfacing of problems. Now, conversely, you may have found yourself with these challenges for the first time in your life as you begin to go through the perimenopause. So today, I really want to talk to you about why this happens and to be prepared for it and be able to therefore overcome any of these challenges that you might find yourself coming across. Now, midlife really brings across significant shifts in our body, and the ebb and flow of roller coastering estrogen and eventually gives way to that sort of notable decline of estrogen alongside that dropping of progesterone levels really brings around these shifts, and it leads to a multitude of changes in our biology, affecting our physical, our psychological and our emotional well-being. And it can have a really profound influence on our relationship with food and our body image. And the dynamics of our eating habits can really change, and also how we view ourselves as well. Now, you might have already observed changes in your body and your eating behaviours, and perhaps, you know, things like persistent dieting, restriction of food groups or calorie counting. You might label yourself an emotional eater, or perhaps you binge eat or feel out of control around food. So let's take a look at why that might be if you are at the midlife stage in your life. So first of all, as we go through the perimenopause, emotional problems can come up, and really resulting to trying to control something in your life, like food, can come up as a result of having to cope with increased anxiety or new anxiety, depression, sleep disturbances, a sense of cognitive decline as well. These can all create the perfect storm. And I think for many women, it feels like it's like that they have to sort of turn to something as a sense of coping. Also at this time of life for many women, they have their older children leaving home, perhaps they are looking after elderly parents as well. For many, this life stage sometimes brings up separation and divorce, and overall there's a real sense of overwhelm and feeling, a sense of loss and just not being able to cope. So that's one of the reasons why this can come up. But at the same time, we've got a change in weight and body appearance for many women. So new estrogen lows and declining progesterone can lead to metabolic changes that leads to that weight gain around the middle. This is very common. And we experienced a 15% drop in our metabolic rate, and that's partly due to our reduced ability to hold onto our muscle mass, to hold onto that muscle, and also due to a shift in insulin resistance. And insulin resistance means we are less able to take in that glucose and use it for energy. The glucose is the sugar in our blood, and use it for energy, which we should be doing. But insulin, we have less of an ability to do that as we reach this stage in our lives. And insulin also plays a role in appetite, but it also plays a role in that sort of can play a role in that sort of reason why we tend to gain weight around the middle at this time in our lives. If women have been previously had PCOS, which is polycystic ovarian syndrome, then they would be more at risk of this reduced insulin sensitivity. But also the perimenopause stage can exacerbate the autoimmune condition Hashimoto's disease, which is where you have an underactive thyroid due to the recalibration of the immune system at this time. Though this is not directly due to the menopause or related to the menopause, it's very common to see this at this time. And of course, an underactive thyroid can bring around other changes, quite a few symptoms that are in common with the perimenopause. So that can sort of add to that whole perfect storm that we're talking about. And it can be really distressing for women, I think, to discover that what they were doing before in terms of how they were looking after themselves, perhaps how they were exercising and how they were eating, is no longer, it feels like it's working for them. And this is when dietary restraint can often emerge. We also have sleep. So sleep quality and quantity. Menopause really can affect our sleep. And this has an impact on both our appetite and perhaps the choices that we make about the food that we eat. What happens with after poor night's sleep, we have decreases in leptin, which is our satiety hormone, telling us that we've eaten enough, and increases in ghrelin, which is our hunger hormone. So we're more likely to crave less nutritious food, crave more, and just be generally more hungry. And then, of course, it really can affect our mood and weakens our ability to handle stress if we're not having enough sleep. And, you know, when we've got that diminished energy and motivation, we're much less likely to perhaps look after ourselves in the same way and cook ourselves a nutritious meal. And then we also have that cortisol connection as well. So we've got cortisol, which, you know, is the stress hormone. It's released, you know, in times when we need that fight or flight response, and it's to release, and it causes a whole cascade of effects. But it essentially, one of the things it does is release glucose to provide energy for our muscles to fight or fly or run away from something. But the problem is that we are if we're constantly in a regular state of stress, then we're continuously activating cortisol, and this can lead to fatigue, feeling of anxiousness, and big sugar cravings. So chronic stress, you know, really reduces also how responsive our body is to insulin, and it also impacts our ability to effectively process glucose, the glucose present in our blood. We also have brain chemicals and cravings. I did a previous video on brain chemicals and hormones to do with cravings, so do check that out in more detail. But essentially, at this time, certainly when we've got erratic fluctuations of estrogen, this can trigger powerful cravings that are linked to diminishing levels of the brain chemicals dopamine and serotonin. And with these reduced levels, we're more likely to seek out foods that will give us that dopamine surge and that those feelings of comfort and pleasure. And for some, this can lead to emotional eating, where they feel like it's becomes their only coping mechanism, and binge eating behavior as well. So perimenopausal women will often turn to dieting because they feel dissatisfied with their body and as a means of coping. But we know that this really does not help. So where can you start? Well, first of all, please download my Breaking the Cycle guide, which identifies key 4 steps to changing your relationship with food. This can really help. You can also check out the Arg to Zen of the perimenopause. I'll leave all these links around the video, which is a wonderful book, which I'm very honoured to have written a chapter all about your relationship with food, more about this at this time. But if you'd like one-to-one support, I do take on a few clients. Do check out a complimentary call